Scripture today is Revelations 2, 1 through 7. Revelations 2, 1 through 7. To the angel of the church in Ephesus write, the one who holds the 7 stars in his right hand, the one who walks among the 7 golden lamps stands, says this, I know your deeds and your toils and perseverance, and that you cannot tolerate evil men, and you put to the test those who call themselves apostles, and they are not, and you found them to be false. And you have perseverance and have endured for my name's sake, and have not grown weary. But I have this against you, that you have left your first love. Therefore, remember from where you have fallen, and repent, and do the deeds you did at first, or else I am coming to you, and will remove your lampstand out of its place unless you repent. Yet this you do have, that you hate the deeds of the Nicolaitans, which I also hate. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the church. To him who overcomes, I will grant to eat of the tree of the life, which is in the paradise of God.
Good morning. It is certainly a great privilege to be together, to be here to worship and to serve God, to look over our lives, recognize where we might need to change, where we might need to grow, what we might need to strengthen so that we might stand before God in our utmost, completest, and most valuable form to Him. Today is a grand day, not just because we are worshiping God, but because we find out just a little bit later on today who's in. And if you don't know that phrase, you don't care about college football. But to everybody else, the final rankings will come out later today. Yes, thank you, Chris, for the horns down. That's 15 yards. We'll find out later today who has made the playoffs. And I doubt that Alabama gets kicked out. And I'm hoping that Georgia does, James, no offense, so that Oklahoma can get in. So it's a wonderful day in that respect, but obviously the more important thing is that we're here to worship God. As we look back over the past year, we want to think about today some of the things that have happened. We think about this year, this 2018 has been a year of trade wars, and Korean summits, and duck boats, and hurricanes, and peacocks. In Thailand, you may remember earlier this year, there were the 12-year-old boys on the soccer team were trapped in a cave with rising water. And for 18 days, the entire world was focused on this rescue of the boys' soccer teams. In North Korea, leaders opened the door to peace talks, to the idea of a unified Korea, partly helped by the presence of the Olympics in South Korea. But it opened the door to a reunion of the national community, and that in itself was exciting. This year, the United States held the world's largest open, free, and fair elections, and they took place without violence. The transitions are happening with peace. Do you know where else you find that in the rest of the world? Hardly anywhere. That is in itself an amazing thing. But it's also been somewhat of a tragic year. We think about the mail bombings in Austin and the threats against political enemies, workplace shootings and shootings in hospitals, shootings in bars, shootings in synagogues, and shootings in schools. And what it does is it reminds us how dangerous a world will be when a society pushes God out and replaces that with self. If it's just what I like or how I feel in this moment, then anything goes. And as the world debates on the number of guns and the amount of legislation and what the Constitution is, they want to continue to ignore the answer, because the answer requires some responsibility on my part. The answer requires responsibility on parents' part. The answer requires responsibility of the individual and putting God back in the place that He deserves. This year, the Norwegians dominated the Winter Olympics in Pyeongchang. This year, the tourists in Hawaii received the alert that a ballistic missile threat was inbound to Hawaii. Seek immediate shelter. This is not a drill. And for a short time, if you recall, everyone in Hawaii was terrified, only to be told just a little while later that it was a false alarm. But can you imagine what those people felt in those moments, thinking that a nuclear missile was headed to Hawaii? Terrifying. This year, Brett Kavanaugh was nominated and appointed to the Supreme Court of the United States of America. And while in itself that doesn't seem like a big thing, well, maybe it is if you look at all the hearings and all the things surrounding it, but listen, in the end, what it ended up being was a grand and important step in the direction of valuing life again in our country. The trade wars were started. Stephen Hawking found out that he was wrong about the existence of God. And United Airlines officially banned the emotional support peacock Dexter in January. Sadly, in June, Dexter passed away. The lesson is, if you're planning on flying in 2019 and you have an emotional support peacock, don't book on United Airlines. But as we look back at 2018, the question is, how did it treat the Brighton Church of Christ? What happened to us in 2018? We're going to spend a little time looking back and also looking ahead to 2019. What is in store for us ahead? In Revelation 2 and 3, both chapters, Jesus writes 7 letters for John to deliver to the what we refer to as the 7 churches of Asia. In each one, it comes from the Lord's assessment of that particular congregation. And as he writes to them, often the formula that he uses is he starts with God's attitude toward them, the praise toward the church. And then if they have any things to condemn, he points out their weaknesses and makes recommendations for the church. And some churches are praised for their faithfulness, while a couple of them, all they have are condemnation because it doesn't seem like there was anything good in that particular congregation. The entire scene of Revelation 2 and 3 really invites us, every congregation of the Lord's church, to look inwardly for a moment and ask, what would Jesus write about our church? What would he say about the Brighton Church of Christ? This morning I want to take a little time to look at Brighton's past, and if the Lord tarries, its future as well. Let's begin by looking at 2018, where we've been, what has happened here. I think oftentimes when we start talking about a church and what has happened, we turn to the numbers. Now understand, we're not just about numbers, we know that, but even though numbers aren't everything, they do help us measure where we've come from and where we're going. And so we do want to take just a little bit of time to look at these. This year, God has given us increase, and we're so thankful for that. The church here at Brighton has had 5 baptisms this year, for which we are eternally grateful. Among those, of course, P.J. Glavey and Don Rehor and Tony Lell and Randy Heaton and Caden Durbany. So thankful for the choices that they made, put the Lord on in baptism to allow God and His grace to wash away their sins. Of those, some have asked about P.J. Glavey recently. He has moved to Florida. He's no longer in our area, but do continue to pray for him. but all the others are still here, and we're thankful to see the faithfulness and the dedication that they're giving. And of course, they are growing in the faith and they're growing in their knowledge alongside each one of us. When we start looking at numbers, we often talk about attendance. Attendance is another measure of growth, and this year, on our Sunday morning services, we're averaging about 126. Now, sometimes, obviously, that's a little higher, sometimes a little lower, but that's our average for Sunday morning. But here's what is interesting, is that is about an 8% increase over last year. That's some positive growth. And, if you think about, what are we trying to do? We're trying to reach the world. And the more people we have on our side, the better opportunity we have to reach those who are on the other side. There's just a known fact. And so the larger we are, the more dedicated we are, the better chances we have to change the world around us. And so we're thankful for the encouraging sides of some growth. And you may say, well, 8% is not a lot. Well, maybe it's not a lot, but listen, that's fairly decent. I do know that in most church growth or church health books and articles and stuff that I read, that they talk about the magic number being 16%. For a church to survive and thrive, it needs to grow by about 16% a year. And that's a pretty large number. But I think it's something we can do. And making 8%, we say, well, that's not 16. Well, that's halfway there. But what's it going to take to get all the way there? It's going to take me, and it's going to take you. It's going to take each one of us being dedicated to the cause of Christ. Attendance on Sunday night and Wednesday nights a little different. We run on Sunday evenings, for example, about 60% of our morning worship. So about 60% of the 126 that are here on a given Sunday morning come back for Sunday night. On a Wednesday night, we run about 42%. Now listen, I'm an optimistic guy that loves God. I'd love to see that number 100. I would love to see 100% of people come back on Sunday night and Wednesday nights. We don't have that, but we're at 60 and 42% for the year 2018. Our contribution has seen a significant increase over last year of about 19%, which is a great number. But the numbers that I saw over the past 6 years, we're up about 40% over what we were 6 years ago. And so we're seeing a nice, strong trend in those numbers. Increase from last year, of course, has been due to many visitors who come and visit with us, but also for new families that have moved in, have placed membership and become part of the congregation here, but also from new Bible studies, people that we've reached out to and have been able to study with and come in. Now, numbers don't measure faithfulness. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying, well, hey, we have 126. That must mean we're faithful. Or we have 8% growth. That means we're faithful. Numbers do not measure faithfulness, but they do reflect some important qualities about the church. They reflect evangelistic attitudes. They reflect a zeal for those around us, for visitors. It reflects a welcoming, friendly atmosphere to those who are outsiders. It reflects an attitude of cheerfulness and giving to God, and it reflects an idea of connections between people. Those are all strong measures of a healthy church, and I like the positive results that we see in it. For this particular year, we have gone through several, I think, very helpful events. Of course, back in May, back in the spring, we had Willie Franklin hold a gospel meeting here. He told some great stories and was motivational and inspirational in a lot of ways, calling for Christians to go into the world and be Christians. And I really appreciate that particular part of his message. In the fall, of course, we had Tyler Young, who talked about the challenges of Christians living in a self-centered culture. All the lessons, of course, are available on YouTube. If you missed one or missed all of them, would like to go back, those are still available there. This year, our VBS was Maker Fun Factory. I wish I had time to sit here and go through 50 photos of that, but we simply didn't, and so I made sure to highlight me in the picture. But Anthony did such a great job, Anthony and Jennifer, in leading a cadre of volunteers to put their hands to the plow and pull off a great VBS. It was encouraging to me that on a couple of the nights, we actually had more kids visiting than our own kids. Now, that's not to say that that happened because we only had one or two of our kids. We had all our kids here. They just brought all their friends, and it was wonderful to see. My understanding is over the last 9 years of VBS, we've had more visitors in 2018 than we had at any time in the past. That's a wonderful measure of growth. And it looks at the excitement that we've had in that event. Our teen groups have been very productive this year. The young men have been taking more part in the more active roles in leading worship, waiting on the Lord's table, even giving the Lord's Supper meditation at times, even preaching from the pulpit, leading prayers, leading singing. And it's very good to see them growing into that role. Because they're part of the church, and as such, then they need to prepare themselves to continue to lead the church into the future. The girls, however, were very much a highlight this year. The teenage girls that we've had, and especially the 5 o'clock class, where they took the initiative upon themselves to put together what became the Gathering God's Girls, which was an event for girls and other congregations in the area to come together and to fellowship with one another and to grow in their appreciation for God. And of course, Missouri and Kara did a great job, not just in organizing those things, but in actually doing the lessons themselves. And we see that, and we are blessed as a congregation to have young people that are so zealous for good works. Our Ladies' Day, of course, with Rihanna Johnson back in October, just a few weeks ago, it seems like went very well. We continue with our 5 o'clock classes to getting all ages together and focused on God. And so from the time they can crawl up into a pew and learn the name Jesus until the time that they're teenagers, we are really seeking to instill in our children and our young people a love for God and a love for His Word. And that 5 o'clock classes go a long way toward that. Our youth group events are getting better in participation, doing other things, and we're so thankful for the leadership that they have. And of course, Kevin Dunham and his work with the Family Matters has been doing a great job. So all in all, we look back at the events of 2018, and we're excited about not just what we've done, but what we can do in the future. We have laid groundwork that is going to help the church grow. There are a couple of miscellaneous things that you may have noticed this year. We've spent a little bit of time doing security upgrades from the fogging of the glass. That's some of you might wonder why do we fog the glass? Well, listen, we live at a time, unfortunately, where some people have nefarious motives, and they would want to come up to worshiping people and wreak havoc. And when you've got glass back doors and all they have to do is look in and pick a target. They can't do that here anymore. We've added security cameras around the building, watching also, including the parking lots, the front doors, the back doors downstairs. We know when people approach, and we have someone at each service monitoring those cameras for the express purpose of trying to keep us safe. We've also put a loud alarm. Hopefully we'll never have to use that. I think we'll test it every now and then, James said, but if you were here the day that we tested, it's loud, and if you hear that, then the idea is to duck and cover behind the pew you sit in. If you were not here during that testing, it's a very distinctive sound. If you ever hear it, even if you've not heard it before, you'll know that that's what it is. It is an alert system within the building, and so we're trying to do everything we can to keep us safe, but of course, the devil's very strong. The devil's very influential in the world. And so we can't be 100%, but we're going to do the best that we possibly can. We've also heightened our internet presence through the website and Facebook and other things that continues to grow and improve. We're thankful for that. And We've spent a lot of time this year studying the book of Mark. And yes, we're going to do Mark tonight. I apologize for those who came for the book of Mark, and we're not doing Mark this morning. We are going to do the widow and her two mites tonight, so I invite you back for that, and then we'll go regularly on Sunday mornings after that. But I've enjoyed the study. I hope that you have. I've learned more about Mark in this past year that I've been studying it, and as Scott says nearly every time he gets up to teach, if you want to learn something, teach it. It forces you to learn and dig, and it appears a lot of times when I write the actual lesson that I'm going to preach, I've barely scratched the surface of my notes, and so it's a great study. So those are some of the things that we've done in 2018, but let's ask the question, where are we going in 2019? Looking forward, we should strengthen what remains. We think about Revelation 3 and verse 2, when he's writing to the church at Sardis, one of the 7 letters to the churches of Asia. He says, "Wake up and strengthen what remains and is about to die, for I have not found your works complete in the sight of my God." And so there is a sense in which some of the things that we've done are laying the foundation with anticipation that they will be built upon. And so we need to strengthen. We need to continue working to make the church better. Many of our ministries are working great. We're thankful for that. But I think if we're honest with ourselves, they can all be better through renewed vigor and more participation, more hands working the plowing of the fields. And so that's kind of what we're looking for in 2019. What about the numbers in 2019? Listen, I pray that God will continue to give us the increase. 1 Corinthians 3 and verse 6, Paul said that I planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the increase. The 5 baptisms that we've had in 2018, we're so thankful for, but let's continue to pray that God will give the increase. But he gives the increase based upon what? Based upon us doing our part to plant and water. We've got to continue to cultivate the fields around us. And one of the most important things you can be doing is invite your friends to services. Bring them in, introduce them to me, introduce them to other people that are willing to study with them. People that have a friendly face, people that have a kind smile, people that are disarming. Bring them in so that we can talk to them. You may not feel comfortable doing a Bible study. Don't let that stop you from reaching out to your neighbor. We've got plenty of people here that will study with your neighbor if we can just meet them. Family members, if we can just meet them. Co-workers, if we can just meet them. But you've got a sphere of influence that I don't have. No one else in this building has the sphere of influence that you have. And the only way that we're going to get people in your sphere is for you to invite them. Plant, water, and trust God for the increase. We can do better with our visitors. Listen, we get a visitor to come in and they're inundated by people, right? I don't know if you've seen it, but if you get a visitor in here, by the end of services, they're surrounded by 5 or 6 or 10 people. That's great. That's a great friendliness. I love to see your love and your appreciation for them, the welcoming atmosphere and things. But listen, when they walk out that door, if we don't have a name or an address or a phone number or an email address or any way to contact them, we can't follow up. And so as nice as we are, we need to take it a step further. We need to mine the data in their lives. Data mining. It's the most important part of visitors. I know that John Neal and the elders are working on a way to effectively mine our visitors for information. The best we can do, start right now, is praying that we come up with the best solution where we can get maybe an email address where we can just send them an email and say, hey, sure glad you came. We hope you can come back. Or an address. Look, anytime we get an address of a visitor, within the first couple of days, Monday or Tuesday, I'm knocking on their door. Personally asking them and thanking them for coming to visit us. But if I don't have an address, I don't know what door to knock. So we're trying to be more effective in that. Another area that, as we look at our numbers, that is ripe for improvement is attendance on Sunday and Wednesday nights. Assemblies are about worship and about fellowship. When we choose not to return on Sunday night and on Wednesday night, we are robbing our brothers and sisters of our fellowship. Sometimes we don't think about that. We think, well, people don't really care. People do care. God gave us one another to help strengthen one another. So being together, the Bible tells us, stirs up love and good works, Hebrews 10:24-5. But sitting out these opportunities lessens our impact of love and good works. It simply does. We can act like it's not a big deal, but it is a big deal. And for those who take the time to prepare a lesson on Sunday night or Wednesday night Bible class, it is demoralizing and discouraging to know that only 40% or 50% thought it worth coming back. And you start to question yourself as a preacher. Have I offended people? Have the lessons been so shallow that they get more out of watching television on a Sunday night than gathering with God's saints? And that's discouraging. And for those who are teaching Bible classes on Wednesday nights, it's the same thing. The fact is, everyone here is important. From the new Christians like Don to the old fossils like Sam, we all are important. We all have a place in God's kingdom. And from men to women, boys to girls, you think about how God chose each of us to become Christians because of what we bring to the table, what my talents bring to His kingdom. So let's renew our commitment to bring our talents and resources and ourselves as much as possible, because this is a strengthening of the church. So, I don't always like to set a specific goal, but in 2019, if we've been averaging, say, 60% on Sunday nights, let's make a commitment now let's try to get that number up to 70%. I know it's not 100. I know there's some of you saying, why not just put 100 on there? Well, I'd love to put 100 on there, but let's be realistic. I know that some people work on Wednesday nights or Sunday nights, and then they're able to come back, and I understand situations like that. But if all we're doing is watching the rest of the Broncos game, maybe we should be here. Maybe this is better for us. And when we think about Wednesday nights at 42%, let's commit to taking that maybe up to 55. And some of you are not going to be able to do things like that. I understand. But baby steps, right? We'll do a little now and a little next year and a little next year. And look, set the goals that we can achieve. And these are goals that I think we can do. This year, some of the events that we've got coming up, I think are really good. We have in May 26th through the 29th, Ernest Benjamin is going to be doing our gospel meeting. If you want to write that on your calendar, May 26th through the 29th. And then in the fall, we have Phil Sanders, the host of the In Search of the Lord's Way program, will be here November 3rd through the 6th next fall. So just a little less than a year from now, November 3rd through the 6th. One of the things that I really appreciate the elders for is the oversight and the love that they have for this congregation. One of the things that they have done for this year is they have tasked our young men to lead the worship services once a quarter. We've been having 1 or 2 a year. We're going to do 4 in a year now. And so we've already been working with the boys, getting ready for January. The next one is going to happen early in January. And so that's one of the things. Listen, what this does is it gives these young men an opportunity to study, to build themselves up, to get a lesson ready. But it also encourages us to look out and know that there is a strong future in the church. And so we're looking forward to the young men participating once a quarter now. And of course, they'll continue to do different things on Sunday morning worship services. But to lead the entire worship from song leading to the Lord's Supper to doing the lessons, that's a great opportunity. And we have a lot of young men that are willing to do it. And I will just give you a little preview. I believe is it January 13th? 13th, is that right? January 13th is when the young men are going to be doing it again on Sunday night. And Caden Durbany will be doing his first lesson. And you'll want to be here for that one. So we're so excited about Caden stepping up and doing that one. We also look forward to other events. Our VBS this year, of course, we want to grow that with our own participation, getting ready, with talking to our friends, our neighbors. So let's get that number. Let's make that trend continue on an upward scale. One of the things we did this year after the VBS is we went out to all of the families that visited during VBS, knocked on their doors, told them how much we appreciated them letting us have their kids for a little while, and invited them back. And listen, we planted some seeds. You say, well, I don't see them here. Well, maybe they're not here, but we've planted some seeds in their hearts. They know about the Brighton Church, and they know that we're about Jesus. They know the things that they need to know. And hopefully whenever they decide to make a change in their life, Brighton is top on their list. That's what we're hoping. And we're going to plant that seed as much as we can. So we're doing follow-up with these families as well. So we're thankful for the VBS that's coming up. Other youth events, of course, Senior Saints that Ron and Jennifer have been doing all along. We'll continue to gather. I think we've got one coming up. Is that right, or was it yesterday? It's today, right? It's today, this afternoon. So I was thinking December 1st, but it's December 2nd. So look forward to those. Family Matters and much more in 2019. We have improvements, again, on the facilities are already slated for this coming year. We're looking at getting a better internet right here in the auditorium as we have more and more people are moving from paper Bibles to electronic Bibles. They need access to the internet, and we want to make sure that it is available for you, that it is strong enough for you, and that you are not dropping out your coverage here. Other internal things, listen. We want so many people coming that we have to start to expand this auditorium. Take out these walls and take out those classrooms and put more pews in. That's our vision. But that's going to take us dedicated to doing those things. Even in the exterior, we've done a lot this past year, but we're looking at possibly doing some exterior painting to bring everything up to make it a little more beautiful and inviting to visitors. And then the theme of study this year. When I think about the theme of study, one of the things I'm thankful for is what is coming up this year. Some of the lessons that I've got planned or slated for this year, things like on worship, some lessons particularly on the Lord's Supper. I want to spend some time in the book of Colossians about knowing Christ. It's one of the book of Colossians exalts Christ to such a high degree that in all things he might have preeminence, 1 in verse 18 says. And the entire book is about exalting Christ to that preeminence, to know him for who he is. At the end of the year, next year, I plan on doing some lessons from Philippians about joy in Christ, which is one of the important aspects of the book of Philippians. But another thing that we're going to be doing this next year in 2019 is a study called One Word. Now, some of you may have, in fact, I know some of you already picked one up, but on the back table there is a book back there, and it's called One Word. Now, what it is it's like a family devotional book. So you take this home for your family devotionals, and each week you'll study one word. So like the first word of all things is word. The second week is creation. Third week is sin. Next one is wrath and grace. and then mercy, love, forgiveness, kindness. There are 53 words in this book, 53 studies. What happens if you're looking at the book, with each chapter, for example, this is the one on word, there is a devotional, one-page devotional right here. There's your Monday study. Here's a second one on word. There's your Tuesday study. Here's your Wednesday study, Thursday study, and Friday study. There are 5 devotionals in each chapter about that particular word. Now, you say, well, I can't do it on Tuesday nights. That's soccer practice or whatever, okay? That's okay. We've got 7 days in a week and only 5 devotionals. So maybe you do yours on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. You know, whatever days you can do it. You say, well, I was out of town last Tuesday. Well, that's okay. If you left your book, you can still make it up. You got an extra day. That's why they only did 5 in each one. Then once you have studied that, we're going to come together, and on Sunday, guess what we're going to study? The same word. So you've done the 5 devotionals on word, and we're going to come together, and the lesson is going to be on word. And the next week, you've done the 5 devotionals on creation, and guess what we're going to be preaching on? Creation. And so the idea is that not only do you have a resource for your family, and maybe you sit down and you read them together, or maybe your kids read it in the morning or read it in the afternoon when they get home from school. You read it in the evening right before you go to bed. I don't know how you want to structure your devotional time, but you have a tool. And the beauty is that we're all on the same page. Each week, we're all on the same page. And when we come together, the lesson is going to be my thoughts on that particular word. I don't think I'm going to take the 5 devotional thoughts. I mean, they may be really good. It may be the way I would go, but I'm going to try to do something a little different than what they have in the book. And so together, it will help unify the church in devotion as well through a connected Bible study. So pick up your book off the back table. We'll start on December 31st. That'll be the first week that will culminate with the Sunday lesson in January, on January 6th. And so you want to be sure and pick your book up before the end of December, and then we'll spend you'll have 6 days in January and 1 day in December there to get all the devotions read. Encourage you to do that. I think that it'll be exciting to be on the same page. I've had several friends do this and other congregations that they work with, and they said that it really built the anticipation and the unity of the church to be talking about these particular things. So that's one of the things that I'm really looking forward to for 2019 as well. Jesus followed that formula we looked at in Revelation 2 and 3 about the 7 churches of Asia. At the end of each one of the letters, Jesus followed that. He cited their good works and their weaknesses and offered steps to growth and everything. Then he encouraged them with a view of heaven. One of these days we'll do a study of just that snippet of heaven that he gives them. But in Revelation 2 and verse 7, he says, "To the one who conquers, I will grant to eat of the tree of life, which is in the paradise of God." Heaven is ahead of us. And as we strive to make Brighton a better church, it begins with each one of us. It begins with me. How can I grow? What can I contribute? What can I do to be a better Christian for God, but to be a better member of the church as well? If you have not given yourself to Christ, listen, it begins right there. Making the decision to obey the gospel, being baptized for the remission of your sins. All things are ready. If you've strayed or you've become weak or maybe you've just lost touch and you say, I want to be committed to Christ, and you seek the prayers of the congregation here, all things are ready for that as well. If you'll come while we stand.